Let's say you wanted to create some copies or some instances from an object that has a textured material, but these simple copies got an exact duplicate of the wooden texture for each instance that looks very artificial. So in this tutorial, we will learn how to create duplicate copies of an object using the same material and the same texture, but each instance will have a random change in the texture which looks more natural. So, we can start with this single wooden plank, and we have to first ensure that a proper UV map is created for our object. Otherwise we can now unwrap it, or create a map like this. It will create a UV map here, which we can use in the shader editor. Let's first turn on the rendered view mode, and then move on to the shader editor. For the texture, we have to add a node called Image Texture node. We need a texture file, so let's pick up this wooden texture here, and then connect its output to the base color. For this texture node, we'll also connect a UV map node for the input vector. And let's pick up the same UV map from this list. Then back to our viewport, we can see that the wooden texture is correctly visible on this plank. Now, in the next step, we will create some duplicate copies of this object and place them in a series like this. They all have the same texture at present, but we want to add some random variations to their texture pattern. So let's go back to the shader editor. We have to first add a mapping node from the vector group and place it between these two nodes. Then we will add some randomness to these location parameters, and this randomness will basically come from an object info node, so let's add that here. If you look closely, you'll find that it has got a random output socket. Let's connect this to the location input of the mapping node. We can now verify the result in the viewport. So the texture has got some random placement as we wanted, but at some places it has also crossed the UV boundaries. So what we are trying to do here is, we are shifting the location of our UV map on this texture randomly for each object, so that the final mapping is slightly different for each of the instances, but we have to also take care of this boundary issue. So again, back to the shader editor, we have to add some math node here to manipulate the amount of this random shift. But there is no generic formula, it depends entirely on your texture and on your UV map. We'll just discuss one specific example. Let's go to the Add menu and add a node called Combine XYZ. We will connect this node to the location vector. Let's keep the 3D viewport and the shader editor both open together so that we can see the changes in real time. So here goes the shader editor, and our Combine XYZ node is right here. If we slowly change this X value, we'll notice that the texture is shifting in the horizontal direction on the target objects. But instead of this, if we rather change the Y value, the texture or the map will change vertically, resulting into a cross-boundary shift. So if we connect this random input to the Y value, we'll get this kind of cross-boundary issues across the objects, and if we connect it to the X value, we'll get a very clean result like this. So this is an example how you can create random variations into your texture, using the same texture file, and keep the objects different from each other. But please remember that it is only an example. The node setup may need a change for another UV map or another texture file. Sometimes you can even use this rotation field as well. So let's connect this random input directly to the rotation vector, without any manipulation. And as we can see here, this also gives us a nice variation in the texture for each object. Let's take another example that we have used for our demo. Here we have added a clamp node to manipulate the random input even before sending it to this Y value, and we have also used a constant offset for the X value as well. You also may need to use additional nodes like this to create these variations perfectly without any defect. Otherwise, you can simply use a seamless texture, and then you don't need to worry about the cross-boundary issues. So I hope you like this tutorial. You can download our blend files if you are a member of this channel. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more such tutorials.